Last weekend, I had some friends over to play Gym Leader Challenge to help get ready for the Perfect Order $3,000 cash GLC event, which took place this past weekend. Even though I can't participate in our 3K events because I have to broadcast them, I do like to test with our locals and help them prepare, and sometimes feed them decks that I wish I could play in the event myself. Meta manipulation! Like when Jesse Parker got second place at the Mega Evolution GLC 3K with Garbodor. That was my list, and I was very proud to see him do so well with it. During our latest testing session, I absolutely ran the tables with my new metal deck, causing many of our locals to question everything that they thought they knew about Gym Leader Challenge format.
We have to decide if we're gonna play metal or not. That's where we're at right now.
And then I took my metal deck to a Gym Leader Challenge League night at Full Grip Games where there was 29 players, and I recorded each of my matches. So in today's video, I'm gonna give a tournament report with my metal deck. If you want to learn more about Gym Leader Challenge format, make sure to check out gymleaderchallenge.com. We've got all the rules and getting started guides there. It is super fun and easy to pick up. There are leagues that run Gym Leader Challenge format all over the world, as well as side events that happen at all major Pokemon TCG tournaments like regional championships and international championships. I also highly recommend the YouTube channel Morse Makes. My friend Ben Morse makes some excellent Gym Leader Challenge focused YouTube content, and he, John, and Anthony just started a Gym Leader Challenge podcast, Gym Leader Chat Lounge, which he releases weekly on the Morse Makes YouTube channel. So definitely make sure to check that out if you haven't already. Let's get into it. When building a Gym Leader Challenge deck, I usually try to ask myself, what is this type the best at doing? What does this particular type do better than every other type? And up until recently, Metal didn't really check too many of those boxes. It was kind of just okay at everything and wasn't even the tankiest deck in format because that title belongs to Wailord, so Metal was just kind of all right. But that all changed with Phantasmal Flames because now Metal has the best basic attack denier in the format with Argalodon and its coded attack. It does 120 damage for 3 metal energy and says during your opponent's next turn, you prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from basic Pokemon. And basic Pokemon are many of the best attackers in Gym Leader Challenge format. So a quick Argalodon can just win the game outright. To back up Argalodon, you also have the best revenge attacker in the game with Zamazenta, whose Retaliate attack does 100 damage plus 120 more damage if one of your Pokemon got knocked out during your opponent's last turn. And with ample support thanks to Revavroom, Bronzong, and Matang, you can get energy onto these Pokemon fairly easily. Argalodon and Zamazenta are the best 2 Pokemon in the deck, by a lot. And the rest of the list is really designed to bring out their strengths and support them. Since Argalodon can be invincible to basic Pokemon, Zamazenta is really there to help answer anything that threatens Argalodon. Your opponent may come up with an evolution Pokemon and knock out Argalodon, but then you can go in with Zamazenta and Raihan or teammates for Lost City or Counter Catcher and just put that Pokemon away for good. Retaliate for 220 damage knocks out almost everything in Gym Leader Challenge format, and combined with Muscle Band, you can even one-hit KO a Wailord, which is kind of one of the biggest existential threats to Argalodon. And with the item-based recovery cards, Ordinary Rod and Super Rod, you can easily just put the Argalodon back in your deck and set up another one. Argalodon isn't supposed to sweep all 6 prizes. It doesn't have to in order to win games. Even though it definitely does that sometimes, you can just go for 2 or 3 prizes with Argalodon. And honestly, if you do that, your opponent is probably scrambling, trying to figure out what to do about it. And you could just win the rest of the game the old-fashioned way with attackers like Zamazenta or Dialga or even Iron Crown. When Argalodon uses coded attack, it becomes invincible to damage dealt by the opponent's basic Pokemon, but it is still affected by effects of attacks, which makes it important to include switch cards like Birdkeeper or Mallow and Lana so that you can switch your Archaludon to the bench if it ever gets confused by a Monkey Dory, which is the kind of thing your opponent is going to try and do to you when you are using coded attack. They're going to try and confuse you or paralyze you or whatever they can do to slow you down. So having those switch cards is really key and helps to make sure that your Archaludon keeps swinging turn after turn. The switch cards also combo really well with Jirachi from Team Up with its Stellar Wish ability, which is just a great consistency ability, allowing you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put a trainer card you find there into your hand. Jirachi does go to sleep when it uses it, so switch cards are essential to getting the Jirachi out of the active spot so that you can go in with something else. But honestly, I kind of see the Jirachi as a card that you don't necessarily want to put into play every game. It's just there in case you need it. In an ideal world, you don't even put the Jirachi into play because it's a low HP liability, and you want your opponent to have to knock out all big guys. That's kind of the idea of the deck. Now, the way the list is built right now, it is very supporter heavy and includes both Cynthia and Caitlyn and Lusamine to recover supporter cards throughout the game. And the reason that both of those cards are in there is because this deck can play a bit like a control deck and get into these really grindy game states at the end of a long match where resources are low, and being able to bring back an extra switch card like Guzma can just win you the game or help shore up a checkmate situation. So I found a lot of value with Cynthia and Caitlyn and Lusamine in the deck. Also, being able to bring back stadium cards like Mount Cornet or Parallel with your Lusamine is really good and can help shore up games too. So I like those cards, but I also wouldn't be too disappointed to cut a supporter or two for extra item-based cards to kind of speed the deck up a little bit. But honestly, it does play more like a control deck, so I think like slow and steady is the name of the game here. So yeah, that's my metal deck. I decided to sleeve it up and bring it to Gym Leader Challenge League Night on Thursday to see if I could win my first badge of the season. I think I've only gotten to play in 1 or 2 Gym Leader Challenge League nights so far this year because I'm usually broadcasting them. If I can win my medal badge, which would require me going 4-0 or 5-0 or whatever, then I get an invite to the Gym Leader Challenge Invitational this summer, which we hold every year for badge earners. That would be dope. That's my goal today, and we're going to see how I do. Before we get to the tournament, I want to give a quick shout out to my channel sponsor, Dragon Shield. Dragon Shield just added 2 new Sparkles colorways to their already expansive Dragon Shield matte sleeve collection, Pink Sapphire and Damazonite. And my deck today is sleeved in the Pink Sapphire sleeves. I think my metal deck looks so good in these new sleeves. You can find them on dragonshield.com and use code TrickyJim at checkout for 5% off your order. Again, that's dragonshield.com for the best selection of trading card game sleeves and accessories to perfectly protect your favorite Pokemon deck. And don't forget to use code TrickyJim at checkout for 5% off your order. Huge thank you to Dragon Shield for being a continued sponsor of the channel. 29 players at Gym Leader Challenge League Night tonight, and round 1, I get paired against John Patterson, who is working on a similar version of the same exact deck that I am playing. So a Metal Mirror round 1. John has 3 badges himself so far this season, winning with Psychic, Water, and Fighting. He's been working on his metal deck the last few weeks, but hasn't been able to get a badge with it yet. His list differs from mine in a few key ways. Most notably, he is playing the new Klefki with the Memory Lock attack, which does 30 damage for 1 energy and makes it so that the defending Pokemon can't use an attack of your choice during your next turn. Could be good against a rampaging Archaludon using coded attack, as Archaludon has to keep using that attack turn after turn in order to get that protection that you want. Turn 1 going first, I'm able to get a Duraludon onto the bench with a Metal Energy attached to it. I'm also playing the Beldum with the Magnetic Lift attack, which comes into play all the time in this deck. Magnetic Lift allows you to stack a card of your choosing onto the top of your deck. Very strong for getting into a game just putting Lily's Determination or Professor's Research on top of your deck is extremely good. My hand is loaded for turn 2, but John plays Marnie to put it to the bottom of the deck, and I get just 4 cards to work with. Off the Marnie, I don't have much, but I do find Jirachi and Floatstone, so I can retreat into Jirachi and use Stellar Wish, finding Buddy Buddy Poffin, which allows me to go grab Varoom and Bronzor to really establish my board. But without a supporter in hand, I'm really hoping that this Jirachi lives through John's next turn. That energy on the Iron Crown on the bench is a little bit intimidating because if John had energy and a switch out, then I would be sitting here waiting on a top deck. That Marnie did hit pretty hard. John plays Skyla for turn, which is a card that I had in older versions of my list. It's nice to just go search your deck for a trainer card, as we see John search his deck for Lily's Determination for next turn. But since I've added Stellar Wish Jirachi into the deck, I felt like I needed more switch outs to move it in and out of the active spot. So I swapped Skyla out for Birdkeeper this week. Speaking of switch outs, I'm able to use Mallow and Lana to switch my Jirachi to the bench after an underwhelming Stellar Wish, and I promote Beldum so that I can use Magnetic Lift with counter energy so that I can go stack Lily's Determination onto the top of my deck. So now, after that early disruption from Marnie, John and I are finally starting to get things going here. John finds Floatstone off the top of his deck to give Cabalion free retreat and plays Lily's Determination for a shuffle draw of 8. All he needs is a single energy, and he'll be able to take a knockout on my Beldum with Iron Crown, but he misses energy off the 8 cards. Does find Buddy Buddy Poffin, however, and plays it to search out Bronzor, and then benches Beldum from hand. Since John didn't search out Varoom off of the Buddy Buddy Poffin, I can pretty much assume that he's prized it, which is pretty devastating for John. John also doesn't have Duraludon established yet, and it's looking like I'm going to be the first player to get Archaludon into play. I play my Lily's Determination and find Archaludon. I also find Evo Soda to play and evolve up my Revavroom. And at this point, I'm feeling extremely confident. All I have to do is get my Archaludon going, and I am going to be firmly in the driver's seat. Since my Beldum is memory locked, I decide to retreat into Jirachi for a Stellar Wish after drawing cards with Rumbling Engine. I find Counter Catcher, and I pass it on over to John. John doesn't have a lot of action going on, but does have a pretty unique turn in that he is able to thin his hand down, play Hex Maniac to turn off abilities, and then use Mirror Draw with Bronzor to fill his hand to 7. And that's the reason that I'm playing the Mirror Draw Bronzor as well. In a pinch, it's just really strong to be able to match hand sizes with your opponent, especially if you are having a tough time getting started, which is the case with John. I really like having multiple little guys in the deck that can all get you into a game, like Beldum, Bronzor, and Stellar Wish Jirachi. It just adds a lot to the consistency of the deck. Since I'm ability locked, this is just a tempo turn for me. I'm going to use Arven to search out a Skateboard and Ultra Ball. A Skateboard allows my Jirachi to retreat even if it's asleep, which is going to be very good for using that Stellar Wish ability. And since my Beldum is no longer memory locked, I can retreat into Beldum and use Magnetic Lift again to stack a card of my choosing on top of my deck. And you can see how cards like Jirachi and Beldum are just really good if you're having these slow games. You can build up that optimal board state that you want so that you can pounce on your opponent in the exact way that you want to, especially trying to leverage that Archaludon in a favorable position. This turn, John could just retreat and take a knockout on my Beldum, but he decides to use Mirror Draw again. After failing an S-Ball, it's pretty obvious that John doesn't have access to Duraludon either, which means his prizes are pretty bad this game. He doesn't have Varoom or Duraludon on the bench. Both of them are prized, so he's going to use Mirror Draw again, probably to try and find an out to Hisuian Heavy Ball so that he can fetch one of those off the prize cards before he starts aggressing. The wait is over, and it's finally time for me to go in with Archaludon. I play Marnie to limit John's hand to just 4 cards, and then start swinging with Coded Attack. John's got a pretty decent response cooked up, though. He can promote Klefki with the Memory Lock to prevent me from using Coded Attack again next turn, and plays Raihan to accelerate an energy onto Cobalion and search out the Hisuian Heavy Ball, and wouldn't you know it, both Duraludon and the Varoom are prized. So he's going to choose to get Duraludon, which I 100% agree with. He's got to get that thing going as quickly as he can. Uses Metal Maker to accelerate an energy onto it, and then Memory Locks my Archaludon for no damage, but makes it so that I can't use Coded Attack next turn. Unfortunately for John, I've got an absolutely cracked response and immediately play Guzma to bring his Duraludon into the active spot. Duraludon's got 130 hit points, and Coded Attack only does 120 damage, but with Muscle Band, I can boost my damage output to 140, and I've got the Lost City in my hand, so I can put John's Duraludon that he worked so hard to fish out of the prizes straight into the Lost Zone. And from this point, I am clear to pretty much just sweep the game. I don't think that there's too much of anything that John can do to combat this Archaludon in the active spot doing 140 damage a turn with Coded Attack while also sending key pieces of John's board to the Lost Zone. He has to rely entirely on this Klefki and the Memory Lock attack to try and stall out my Archaludon for a turn. That's all he can really hope for. Metang only does 60 damage. That's not going to be enough to take down the 180 hit point Archaludon in the active spot. Neither John or I are playing Metagross in our decks. I don't really think that there's a Metagross that is good enough to warrant play right now. I do have hope that one day Pokemon will print a truly goated Metagross, but I don't think that day has come yet. After this Memory Lock, I actually don't have the switch out in my hand right now. I'm trying to figure out what my route is to pivot the Archaludon out of the active, and I'm thinning my hand down. I can Rumbling Engine for one card, and the one card is the Bird Keeper, and you see John shaking his head. I Rumbling Engine for just one, looking for the switch out. I had the knockout on the Klefki guaranteed with the Zamazenta. I could have just retreated into it to take the knockout, but obviously I want to keep that Coded Attack lock going. The Bird Keeper off the top deck, super clutch. With the Bird Keeper, I'm able to maneuver the Archaludon to the bench, which removes all effects on it, and then retreat into Archaludon and punt that pesky Klefki to the Lost Zone. At 3 to 6 prizes, staring down an Archaludon with a fully loaded Zamazenta on the bench, John is in a devastating position. His only chance to remove the Archaludon from play would be to use Counter Catcher to push it to the bench, and then maybe Boss's Orders to bring it back into the active spot in the same turn to knock it out with Zamazenta. But he has to just use Counter Catcher to take a knockout on Revavroom with Iron Crown to get on the board with a single prize. We actually see he finds Boss's Orders off of the prize card, so he didn't have access to that play. It would have had to been Guzma with Counter Catcher, and that's just a lot to piece together when you're under so much pressure. Without an answer to Archaludon, John scoops it up, and I get the win in round 1. Round 2, I'm up against Michael Prado, our resident grass expert. He's got like 4 different grass decks built, and it's always fun to see what new green concoction he's got for GLC League nights. Going second and opening Duraludon is actually pretty sick when your opponent isn't threatening it on turn 2, as I'm able to go Arven for Quick Ball, use Quick Ball to discard a Metal Energy, grab Varoom out the deck, and Metal Sharpener for 30 damage, which allows me to attach a Metal Energy from my discard pile to one of my Pokemon, and I can just go attach that to Duraludon, meaning that I'm threatening a turn 2 Coded Attack with Archaludon, if I can find the pieces. Michael's got Hilda, which allows him to go set up Groddle, and he can use Groddle's Sun-Drenched Shell to help set up the rest of his board. Now, I know that Torterra is the most intimidating Pokemon in Michael's deck. Its Evo Press attack can do up to 300 damage for just 2 energy if Michael has a full board of evolution Pokemon. But I don't ever plan on letting this game get to that point. I evolve into Archaludon, put Lost City into play, and Iono. For 6 cards, all I need is a Metal Energy, and this Grottle is toast. And the last card that I draw is Earthen Vessel, which I can play to go get 2 Metal Energy out of the deck, which means I've got the turn 2 Coded Attack, a massive 180 hit point Stage 1 Pokemon that now can't be damaged by basic Pokemon, and as an added bonus, has a minus 30 resistance to grass. Michael tries to slow things down by spreading damage with the Sparkle Motion Celebi, which only gets knocked out if he flips a Tails, but I use Coded Attack, he flips Tails, and the Celebi joins Grottle in the Lost Zone. Now this next turn actually presents a pretty interesting situation for my Archaludon, as Michael has 3 different evolution Pokemon on the bench that he is working on powering up, while he sends up Roselia with the Poison Point ability. Poison Point makes it so that if my Archaludon swings into Roselia, my Archaludon will be poisoned and take residual damage between turns. And with all of these evolutions that Michael is building up on the bench, surely he will be able to take care of the Archaludon eventually. But honestly, that's fine. I just keep attaching energy to Zamazenta and swing with Archaludon, taking the poison from Roselia. Archaludon has already taken 3 prizes to Michael's 0. So even if Archaludon does get knocked out in the coming turns, I can easily finish up the game with any of my other attackers and still win. Michael sends up Dartrix, and here I am thinking that my Archaludon is finally going to get knocked out when he attaches Ignition Energy to it and uses Feather Shot to knock out my Bronzor on the bench. Kudos, Michael. I did not see that coming. But I've got teammates in hand, so I can search my deck for whatever 2 cards I want, and of course, I'm going to use this opportunity to establish Revavroom so that I can draw through my deck and set up more attackers to clean up the rest of this game. Another Coded Attack brings me to just 2 prize cards remaining, and with poison damage, my Archaludon is finally starting to look a little worse for the wear. Michael sends up Low Kicks, whose jumping shot will still be a little short of the knockout on Archaludon thanks to Archaludon's resistance to grass, but with Muscle Band, Michael gets the exact math he needs to take a knockout on Archaludon and finally remove it from the board. Even without Archaludon, all I have to do is take 2 more prizes. So I put an energy on Dialga and play Hex Maniac while taking the knockout with Zamazenta's Retaliate for 220 damage. My hope is that by playing Hex Maniac, I make it so that Michael can't pull off any shenanigans with the Fluffy Barrage Jumpluff, who can attack twice with its Fluffy Barrage ability, as I suspect that's the Jumpluff that he's playing. After taking a final look through his deck, Michael packs it up, and I move on to 2-0. Round 3, I'm up against Chase Juicy, who's on a little bit of a heater recently. He's got 3 badges, Water, Psychic, and Fighting. 2 of those he's earned in the last couple of weeks with the Milo Pump deck and with the Psychic Garbodor deck. Today, he's playing Darkness. And as he sets up, I can see right away that his deck does have some evolution lines in it that could threaten Archaludon. Crobat, Liepard, and Toxtricity can all deal damage to it, but none of them can take a 1-hit KO on Archaludon. So I'm still thinking that I'm gonna set it up and see how far it can go in this match. Off Iono, I find Quick Ball, which I use to search out Duraludon, and then Cobalion gets in there with Quick Guard, an attack that makes it so that Cobalion cannot be damaged by basic Pokemon during your opponent's next turn. You can't use Quick Guard back-to-back turns. It would be pretty broken if you could, but Quick Guard for a turn is a very strong way to start the game and can help give you time to build up to Archaludon. Archaludon is the ace in my deck, but the ace in Chase's deck is Guzzlord, who he finds off of Hisuian Heavy Ball. Guzzlord has 150 hit points and the Red Banquet attack, which does 120 damage for 2 darkness and 2 colorless energy, and takes an additional prize card whenever it takes a knockout. Guzzlord is super intimidating because it could be possible for Chase to just ignore my Archaludon and take 4 prizes over the course of 2 turns if he's able to maneuver around Archaludon to Red Banquet 2 different targets for knockout. Chase uses Golbat's Discreet Draw to draw 2 cards and is able to piece together Guzma on my benched Varoom for knockout with Spiritom's Anguish Cry for 70 damage. That does stunt my setup for a turn, but fortunately, I've got Ordinary Rod in hand, so I can just shuffle the Varoom back into my deck. I've also got Buddy Buddy Poffin to fish it back out immediately, and Versus Seeker for Iono to get 6 fresh cards. And since Chase used Guzma to push my Cobalion to the bench, it can use Quick Guard again to slow the pace of the game back down. After getting hit with Quick Guard again, Chase doesn't have a way around it this time, so has to just take a turn to build up his board state a little bit, evolves up into Toxtricity, and uses its Sinister Surge ability to accelerate an extra energy from the deck onto Guzzlord. I'm actually stoked to see this, as it puts Guzzlord within range of a muscle-banded Archaludon. It's definitely something that I'm going to keep in mind. A pass from Chase is exactly what I want to see, as I evolve up into Bronzong and Revavroom, attach an energy to Duraludon, and use Rumbling Engine to fill my hand to 6. Metal Lynx on Bronzong gets the 3rd energy that I need onto Duraludon. Ultra Ball in hand allows me to search out Archaludon from the deck, and Mallow and Lana allows me to switch the Archaludon into the active spot, and I am now using Coded Attack for 120 damage. Staring down Archaludon with a board full of basic attackers doesn't feel great for Chase, as he's now waffling, trying to figure out where to go from here. He starts charging energy onto Toxtricity with Sinister Surge so that he can eventually take a bite out of Archaludon, but counter energy isn't activated for Chase yet, as we're tied on prizes, so he just has to pass. This would be an extremely good turn for me to use Boss's Orders or Guzma to bring up one of Chase's evolution Pokemon on the bench and knock it out with Coded Attack, but unfortunately, I don't have that play, so I just have to play Marnie and swing with Coded Attack for another knockout. Off the Marnie, Chase has teammates, so he can go get whatever 2 cards he wants out of his deck, and since he's behind on prizes now, he will be able to swing for 100 damage with Toxtricity. It looks like Chase is playing Escape Rope in his list, which is pretty standard fare for Darkness decks, especially when they're trying to switch that Hoopa in and out of the active spot. Escape Rope, like Counter Catcher, is a card that's kind of scary for Archaludon because it's technically possible to play Escape Rope to push Archaludon to the bench, and then Guzma or Boss's Orders in the same turn to bring it back into the active spot, and then swing into it with a powerful basic Pokemon. Again, all effects of attacks get removed from a Pokemon when it moves to the bench. But that play is just really hard to cook up on the exact turn that you need it, and only answers the Archaludon. At the end of the day, I've still got other attackers on my bench who are ready to go if the Archaludon does ever go down. So you can see how Archaludon just is really a board state all by itself. You get going and it very easily can take a few prizes before it ends up going down, and usually just disrupts whatever it is your opponent is trying to do. Whatever their A plan is, Archaludon is probably just throwing a wrench in it while taking probably half the game's prize cards all by itself. Chase punches my Archaludon for 100 damage with Toxtricity's Gentle Slap, and this would be a really good turn for me to use Mallow and Lana, but I already used Mallow and Lana earlier in the game to switch my Archaludon into the active spot, so I know that this Archaludon is going down. All I really have to do is build up my board to be able to outrace Chase after Archaludon goes down, so that's where my mind is going now. And fortunately, I'll be up 2 prizes, so even if Guzzlord does take a knockout with Red Banquet, I should still be cool. With Metang, Bronzong, and Revavroom all on the bench, I'm feeling really confident as I take this knockout on Toxtricity with Coded Attack. And you see how crazy this is? Chase would love to take the knockout on Archaludon with Guzzlord for 2 prizes to even up the prize trade, but can't because of the effect of Coded Attack. So has to send up Crobat instead to use Wing Attack to finish off the Archaludon. A 2-hit KO, 2 evolution Pokemon on Chase's side of the board, just sacrificed to deal with the single Archaludon, which leaves me in a very powerful position for the rest of the game. At this point in the game, with 3 prizes remaining and Super Rod in my hand, I have to decide if it's worth it to try and get Archaludon back into play, and I decide that I really don't need it in order to win. I've got Dialga in my hand, and all I really want is more energy in the deck so that I can potentially power it up to take a knockout on Chase's Guzzlord, that would be the dream. So I use Super Rod to shuffle more basic energy into my deck, put Dialga down, and use Metal Maker. All I need is 1 energy, and I can knock out that Guzzlord on the bench, and the last card is a Metal Energy. I attach an energy from hand, use Lysander to bring Guzzlord into the active spot, then Rumbling Engine to get an energy into the discard pile so that I can use Metal Links to charge it up onto Dialga, and Chrono Burst for 160 damage to send Chase's Guzzlord packing. Now this Dialga is kind of a funny card in the deck, right? Because it's not like the best Pokemon ever. It's a basic Pokemon with 140 hit points and the Chrono Burst attack, which does 80 damage, plus you can shuffle all energy attached to Dialga back in the deck and do 80 more damage. It just does 160 damage. And as you could see from this board state right here, having a guy that can just punch for 160 damage and clear most big basics and even many stage 2s in the middle of the game is really valuable, right? Because Cobalion only ends up hitting those numbers at the end of the game. Zamazenta only hits those numbers if a knockout was taken the turn previous, so there's times where you can't use Zamazenta to deal big numbers. And then Iron Crown, I mean, he's like the worst guy in the deck, but you kind of have to play him because he's just a decent lead that does 120 damage for 2. So Dialga just fits the bill quite nicely. He just deletes things when you really need them deleted, like that Guzzlord there on the previous turn. Without Guzzlord in play, Chase just has to wing attack my Iron Crown for 100 damage while I take a turn to build up my board again. So when Chase does eventually take the knockout on my Iron Crown, I've got 2 built-up attackers with only 2 prizes remaining and a checkmate board state established. Chase sees the writing on the wall and scoops it up, and I punch it in for my 3rd win. Going into round 4, I'm up against Jack Martin with Psychic Garbodor, a deck that I helped to build, so I know for a fact that it doesn't have a good answer to Arcaladon in it. In fact, Jesse Parker texted me during the last 3K that the Garbodor deck that I gave him didn't have an answer to Arcaladon. He was pretty salty that he lost to it during Swiss. So I'm feeling good about this matchup from the jump. Jack opens Frillish with the Oceanic Gloom attack. Item lock is a little bit intimidating, but I've got a great lead myself going second. Nest Ball in the opening hand for Duraludon. Thankfully, I have not prized Varoom or Duraludon yet in this tournament. That is a bit of a concern, as you can see how much this deck does rely on those cards. So I've thought about including Town Map in the list for that reason, because you can use Raihan or Teammates for Town Map and take a knockout, go get the piece you need. Yeah, whatever. Off Stellar Wish, I find Lysander and use it to bring Iron Boulder into the active spot because it doesn't have an energy on it and has a retreat cost of 3, and I'm really not trying to get item locked next turn. But looking back on this play, it is a little bit sketchy because all Jack needs to do is drop D-Valley, there it is, and match hand sizes, and then my Jirachi gets knocked out, and I need the Jirachi to find a draw supporter for next turn because my hand is kind of dead. Fortunately for me though, Jack's supporter for turn is Professor's Research, and he's unable to match hand sizes with me after drawing those 7 cards. My hand is just 3, so he has to pass. I evolve into Arcaladon on the bench, get a second energy onto it, and find Marnie off of Stellar Wish to go see the next 5 cards. And at this point, all I need is 1 more energy for my Arcaladon, and we are in there. Jack's got Parallel City to limit my bench to 3, and is able to match hand sizes, so he uses Adjusted Horn for 170 damage and knocks out Jirachi. I've got the coded attack guaranteed with counter energy in hand, so I push the Arcaladon into the active spot, but my top deck, Teammates, really helps me to develop a board state. Pokepad fetches me Revavroom, which I evolve up on the bench, and then Teammates gets me Muscle Band and Earthen Vessel. I can use Earthen Vessel to go get 2 Metal Energy out of the deck, 1 for Arcaladon and 1 for Rumbling Engine, and Muscle Band boosts my coded attack up to 140 damage so that I can take a clean 1-hit knockout on Iron Boulder. This board state is perfection. Archaludon with a Muscle Band swinging in the active spot, Zamazenta getting powered up on the bench, and Revavroom to draw me cards throughout the match. I'm really feeling like there's no way I can lose here. Jack does have a couple of options available to him in his deck. Whether or not he will go for them, we have to see. Xatu can deal 80 damage to Archaludon, so that's something. It does take 3 energy, but it can help soften Archaludon up. And then Garbodor actually would be Jack's best attacker into my Archaludon. Garbodor's offensive bomb attack does 60 damage for 4 energy and makes the opponent's active Pokemon confused and poisoned. If Jack can disrupt my hand at the end of the game and attack with Garbodor, maybe he can claw his way back into this game. Garbodor does take 4 energy in order to use offensive bomb, but Mewtwo has the Psy Pump attack, which allows you to attach 2 psychic energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. So Jack could use Mewtwo's Psy Pump in order to juice up Garbodor and maybe confuse me after some hand disruption later in the game. Unfortunately for Jack, he doesn't see that line and just picks off my bench Pokemon one by one until I have no bench Pokemon remaining and an Archaludon still in the active spot doing 120 damage every turn with Coded Attack until I eventually win. 4-0, baby. 4-0. Just 1 win left, and that medal badge is mine. My final opponent of the night is Kai with his fighting deck, and I'm stoked to see it because fighting has got a lot of big basic attackers in it, which is going to be very good news for Archaludon. I go first and just have to attach Metal Energy to Duraludon and pass, while Kai leads Solrock and plays Iono into a hand that looks pretty atrocious, honestly. He doesn't find an out to Lunatone or anything, just benches a Ting Lu and has to pass. I've got Earthen Vessel and Marnie this turn. Earthen Vessel can discard a Metal Energy so that I can accelerate another one to my Duraludon with Metal Sharpener this turn. Metal Sharpener poking 30 damage is also going to soften up this Solrock. And I see that I didn't prize the Archaludon again, so I'm really stoked about that. Off this Marnie, I'm just hoping to find more Pokemon for my bench so that I can get a little bit of a wider board. And wouldn't you know it, Buddy Buddy Poffin, the perfect draw, allowing me to search out Varoom and Beldum. And at this point, I am feeling great, so long as my Duraludon doesn't get smoked this next turn, which shouldn't really be possible. Premium Power Pro is already in the discard pile, and there's no Ogie Dogie with an energy attached to it to worry about. So I'm thinking that with this Metal Sharpener, I should be good to evolve into Archaludon next turn and start swinging. Somehow, off this Marnie, Kai's hand is still atrocious. He retreats Solrock into Ting Lu and pokes for 30 damage. Not even 30 to everything with Ground Crasher, just 30 to the active spot. He's got a Raihan in hand, so maybe he's hoping that his Ting Lu will get knocked out so that he can use Raihan eventually, but it's looking real bad for Kai already because I've got Archaludon swinging for 120 damage, Coded Attack, and Kai doesn't have anything on board that can deal with it. Once I knock out the Ting Lu, Kai is eventually able to get some draw going with Lunatone. He finds Ogie Dogie and gets that thing powered up and does go for Riolu, obviously. He needs the Riolu to evolve into Lucario to actually answer my Archaludon. But as soon as he benches Riolu, I use Lysander to bring it up and knock it out with Coded Attack. And Kai and I are joking around because earlier in the night, he asked me what deck I was playing, and I showed him I was playing Metal, and he laughed and told me that that deck doesn't work because he played against it earlier in the week at a different card shop and destroyed it. So he's got a very low opinion of the deck. And at this point, when I'm using Lysander to bring up his Riolu, I'm asking him to please admit that the deck is good. And he's telling me, well, if that's what you need to sleep at night, sure, the deck works. It's good. And you know what, Kai? That is what I need to sleep at night. I need to hear affirmation that my Metal deck is goated, all right? And I'm certainly feeling it right now. Metal is feeling pretty cracked, I have to say. After knocking out Kai's Riolu and taking half of the game's prize cards with Archaludon, Kai scoops it up, and I win 5-0 with the broken metal deck. Now, if you thought to yourself, boy, that looked kind of easy, Andrew, it's because it was easy. I predicted the exact kind of deck list that my opponents would bring to the table and countered them perfectly with Archaludon. I mean, I hardly had to break a sweat. Archaludon blocked almost all of my opponent's best attackers from attacking. That's how good Archaludon is in Gym Leader Challenge. Now, if you want to see how rare it is to see a metal win at our Gym Leader Challenge League, we can head on over to morsemakes.com. Ben Morse, who runs the Morse Makes YouTube channel, keeps all of our Gym Leader Challenge League stats on his website, glc.morsemakes.com. There have been 33 Gym Leader Challenge League nights played so far this season, and this is only the second medal badge earned. The last medal badge was earned by fellow medal enthusiast Craig Davenport back in August of 2025. So it's been a while, but my hope here is that people will finally wake up to the true strength of metal in Gym Leader Challenge format and the dominance of Archaludon from Phantasmal Flames. Now, in Gym Leader Challenge, when you make a deck, it's customary to give it a cool name because you can't just call it the metal deck. There's a bunch of different kinds of metal decks, and you can't just call it the Archaludon deck because there's at least 2 different Archaludons that are playable in Gym Leader Challenge. So I'm calling this one Arch Nemesis. You get it? It's like the arch, it's a play on words. Arch Nemesis. It's like an arch, and it's also your nemesis. You probably don't want to see that card. Anyways, I've earned my medal badge now, which means I've qualified for the 2026 Gym Leader Challenge Invitational here at Full Grip Games, which I am very much looking forward to. If you want to learn more about Gym Leader Challenge format, make sure to check out gymleaderchallenge.com and join the Tricky Gym Discord, discord.gg/trickygym. It's a great place to connect with other Gym Leader Challenge fans and talk about strategies, your favorite decks, Pokemon, things like that. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like the video, sub to the channel, all that good stuff. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.